Hello, everybody. Hey everybody, Geraldine Rose here, catching up on the video from one of the Color Throwdown challenges in blue, navy, and yellow, not colors I typically work with. Anyway, got out the Canson XL watercolor, cut up a couple of panels for it, figured I'd see which one turned out in whatever direction. Taped them down to my Make Art station with the masking tape and applied basically tones of blue to the panels. So I thought I'd try out that salt technique. I've never done it before, but we're going to give it a go. Well, you can see it doesn't really matter that you be careful at all in your application of the ink, because they're going to get so much water on it when you're actually putting the salt on later. And of course, I am very quickly going to get out my Lindys Magicals and some Nouveau Shimmer powder here. Grab whatever colors you want. I just grabbed a couple of the blues. So you got to be really careful tapping that shimmer powder on, because when it poofs out, it poofs out. The Lindys Magicals, I find that if I get a brush and just lightly tap, it seems to spread it pretty good actually doing in that matter. And then you can just kind of dab at the few clumps that you will get out of that once you're spritzing it to get the powders to move around. So that one on the right, I've got it masked off because I had a different concept in my head, and of course it took off in a different direction from that, but that's for another video. Anyway, still just getting the powders down here for later. And all right, we're spritzing now. This is one of those really fine mist sprayers. You can get them on Amazon, several other places, probably in your dollar store too. And this is the neat part, because you get to see the stuff kind of move around, right? All right, it's like starting to spread, and it goes out like threads, kind of like spider webbing going everywhere. And this is where I'm grabbing the salt. So we don't have salt in our house. I've got not normal table salt anyways. We're both low salt diets, and I had some pickling salt left, which is what this is, because my only other choice was the horse's Himalayan pink salt. I didn't know how that was going to react on the panel. So I tapped her all down there. I grabbed out some oxide sprays, grabbed out some mica sprays. So I thought, oh, they'll kind of, cozy up against the salt too. Had to let it dry. Once it was dry, to flatten it out even better, I ran it through with the die cut so you get my rectangular panel. And you can see, of course, I'm going to like, ooh, look at all that shimmer. And it is a neat effect, actually. So here's my rabbit tool, and getting some powder down so that I can get some embossing on there without it sticking to all of the other stuff that we've got on there, between the ink and the oxide spray and the mica spray, and then of course the shimmer powders and the Lindys Magicals. So just using some hero hues. I think that was the unicorn white. It was a pigment ink, and then a fine white embossing powder on top of that. Tapping her off. I really like the big bins, actually. It's a lot easier to get it than you'll see later on when I'm doing the black shimmer powder, putting it over paper and then having to tap everything back in. Anyway, of course, the embossing. I've sped that up. It's so noisy too, so I really had to turn the volume down on that. Okay, here comes Miss Fairy, and we're getting her in. What did I use on that? The Nocturne ink, so that I could use the shimmer powder. Yep, there's the black shimmer powder. And why? Everybody knows how to funnel it back into the jar, but you had to show that. I should have edited that out. Oh well, I'm a goof. Okay, so this one was fun because it's really neat watching the shimmer powder melt down. And that part I missed videotaping. It was adding the fairy dust, because of course she has to have fairy dust coming out of her wand. And then I thought, well, she just needs a little bit more, navy behind her, kind of like in the wake of her wings, so to speak. And I was like, okay, let's try a little ink smushing there, just with, of course, the over droplets that I got down on my Tonic Studios glass mat here. And I think I'm still trying to squash it down a little bit. I think I still had a wee bit of warping after the heat embossing, and of course just the amount of water that it took, and the fact that I wasn't taping it down on a proper waterboard. All right, now again, fairy dust. Still needed more yellow in there to actually make things right for the color challenge. So very carefully tapped in a bunch of I think it was the Harvest Moon mica spray along her fairy dust path. And here's where I got the brilliant idea that I didn't think the panel behind actually looked like dark enough, navy enough. So I'm coming in with some crackle accents, and I went all the way around the edge with this crackle accents, and you'll see that I've got it later up in the top corner waiting for it to dry so that I can adhere the two together onto the card base. So there she is drying, and while that was drying, I got out one of the stickles, because of course her fairy wings are going to be a different color of sparkle, right? And they're translucent, you can see through them. So one of the stickles, and just went around and applied that everywhere over her wings. And here's the one where I'm a little bit happier with how the crackle has dried around the edges, so adhering that down to my Nina card base that I had cut out and scored, having it ready. And as I was gluing that panel down and tested out the top one against it, I just didn't like it. I said, okay, let it sit and percolate, you'll figure out what to do with it. So in the meantime, I'm adding some glossy accents on top of the fairy rings, because her sparkle from the stickles was sticking out, and fairies don't have rough wings, so we had to fix that. So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to pounce some of the darker chip sapphire ink around the outside, see if we can navy that up a bit so there's a bit more contrast. And then I end up going in with some gold foil over top of that too. And that actually worked out really neat, because it kind of stuck to the crackle accents that were there, and it ended up being really nice and patchy. So inside sentiments, we've got Close to My Heart, and I can't remember who the other one is. I'll probably go look it up and put it in the description. Anyway, I did in the 2 tones of blue, because you know I like doing either different tones on the inside or ombreing them in some manner. Got those inside there. We're closing in on the home stretch here pretty quick, I think, guys. All right, here's the custom stamp. You guys can get them from Scrap and Stamp around Christmas time. Worth it. All you need to tell them the name you want on there, and hey, it's yours. It's actually really fun to have them. Threw some embellishments on the front, and that's it. All right. Well, everybody, you be that change you want to see out there in the world, and y'all have fun crafting. Okay, bye-bye.